Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story: Modi makes his first trip to China in 7 years. Xi rolls out a new global governance initiative with Beijing's new plans following the Belt and Road. We take a closer look at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit. Elon Musk's AI startup xAI takes a former Chinese national engineer to court. He's been accused of stealing trade secrets to benefit tech rival OpenAI. Anti-Chinese Communist Party slogans were projected onto a university's building in southwestern China last Friday. We have the details. Beijing is moving ahead with a massive dam in Tibet near the Indian border. New Delhi calls it a water bomb and is racing to build a dam of its own in response. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting took place in the city of Tianjin on Monday. Chinese Communist leader Xi Jinping aimed to push his vision of global governance and a reshaped world order. So what happened at the SCO summit? Here are the key takeaways you need to know. Let's break it down.
India's Prime Minister Modi made his first visit to China in 7 years, joining the SCO summit in Tianjin. During his talks with Xi Jinping, Xi downplayed border tensions and called for a dragon-elephant dance, symbolizing harmony between China and India. Modi said the ties between the two countries shouldn't be influenced by any third party. A viral moment showed Xi, Modi, and Putin chatting and laughing together. Shortly after, the three leaders addressed NATO's eastward expansion. And in the summit speech, Xi criticized bullying in global affairs. He urged the members of the SCO to stand against hegemonism, reaffirming China's regional leadership. Just before the summit, Xi also met leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan, showing support for the two nations joining the SCO. On Monday, Xi announced 100 new small but impactful livelihood projects across SCO countries. These new supplementary initiatives follow China's Belt and Road project. Xi also unveiled plans to set up 10 new Luban workshops over the next 5 years. These training centers are seen as successors to the Confucius Institute, aiming to export China's soft power push through education. In addition, Xi pledged roughly $280 million in grant aid to the SCO member states by the end of the year. Chinese officials say the recent summit was the largest since the organization began, with 26 countries taking part. The organization now includes 10 full members and 2 observers, with a combined economy nearing $30 trillion. At the summit, Xi unveiled his global governance initiative, calling for respect for international law and global trade order. But critics say that China's actions, from militarizing the South China Sea to flooding markets with cheap products to covering up COVID-19, tell a very different story. However, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres praised China's fundamental role in supporting multilateralism. Xi also called for deeper cooperation on AI and invited countries to join China's International Lunar Research Station project. The summit wrapped up with the Tianjin Declaration. Notably, it didn't mention Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine. Ukraine's foreign ministry called it a failure of Moscow's diplomatic efforts. After the summit, Putin will attend China's military parade on September 3rd in Beijing's Tiananmen Square. According to South Korean media, North Korea's Kim Jong-un is already traveling by train from Pyongyang. Russian media reports that Kim and Putin will be seated on either side of Xi Jinping during the event.
To discuss Chinese Communist leader Xi Jinping's meeting with leaders from more than 20 countries, NTD's Arlene Richards was joined by China expert Gordon Chang. Take a look.
It's significant because what we have is the war in Ukraine. We've got insurgencies in North Africa that look like wars. We've got the war in the Middle East. We had a short conflict between Pakistan and India. I mean, the world is falling apart, and China and Russia are disrupting it. They are actually trying to bring down the United States. Now, they've got a long way to go, but nonetheless, they're working very hard to do it. And that's why when you see all these leaders together, it is, of course, concerns.
Now, you talk about them wanting to bring down the United States. This meeting actually comes as India is facing these sweeping tariffs from the U.S. and Russia is embroiled in sanctions levied by the U.S. over the Ukraine war. And even China is engaged in a trade standoff. So with Xi's goal of leading the international order, How could a stronger bond among these nations impact President Trump's foreign policy?
Well, for instance, if India were to desert to China and Russia, that would be a major blow for us. Now, I'm not that worried about it because China is claiming large portions of Indian territory as its own. There have been these military incursions into Indian territory, and the United States helps defend India. But nonetheless, there is a rift right now between New Delhi and Washington. Part of it is because of President Trump's pro-Pakistani policies, and of course, the additional 25% tariff for the purchasing of Russian oil. So I think that what is important is for the world's two most important democracies to get back on track. But I don't worry too much about an enduring partnership between New Delhi and Beijing.
Now, going back to this summit, there are a lot of grand gestures and show of unity happening right now, but many of the members of this summit have had significant battles at their borders, most recently India and Pakistan. So could these strained relationships interfere with China's efforts to become what China's leader Xi has been calling the stable alternative to the U.S.?
Well, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is big. I mean, it creates a lot of headlines, but it doesn't do anything. And it can't because you have all sorts of countries there which have conflicting interests. And this is also true of the BRICS grouping. It's true of the G20. All of these large groupings suffer from being too big and members not having the same interests. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of propaganda here, but I don't think that when you look at it, that these groupings do anything. If you want to get something done, you need to go to the Oval Office to get President Trump to do it. So, for instance, he did separate India and Pakistan. He did separate Cambodia and Thailand. The list goes on where the President of the United States, and not China, and not the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, gets stuff done.
Well, it will be interesting to see what develops after this summit and what President Trump's reaction will be to it. Gordon Chang, author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Arlene.
During Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to China for a summit, President Trump said Monday that India has offered to cut tariffs on U.S. goods to zero.
Trump wrote on Truth Social, quote, "They have now offered to cut their tariffs to nothing, but it's getting late. They should have done so years ago." In the Post, the president accused India of setting the highest tariff on U.S. goods of any country. He said because of that, U.S. businesses are unable to sell there. He also called trade relations with India a, quote, one-sided disaster. The Trump administration currently charges tariffs of up to 50% on Indian goods.
Elon Musk's AI startup xAI is suing a Chinese national for stealing sensitive trade secrets. He worked there as an engineer. He's being accused of storing the information on personal hard drives and sending them off to major competitor OpenAI. The complaint filed on Thursday says that Xi Jinping stole sensitive information about advanced AI technologies. The company claims this technology is capable of surpassing the rival company OpenAI's ChatGPT, and Li intended on passing the information over to them. With the stolen data, OpenAI can save billions in development and research. Li joined xAI last year. Notably, he was among the 20 earliest engineers working on Grok, the chatbot for xAI. This gave him broad access to the key sensitive technology early on. The company says he stole its trade secrets in July, right after accepting a job offer from OpenAI. Li also went on to sell $7 million worth of xAI stock before quitting the company. According to the lawsuit, Li admitted to copying sensitive data onto personal hard drives and trying to hide his activity in mid-August. xAI is now asking the court to fine Li for damages and block him from taking the new job at OpenAI. Bring manufacturing back to the U.S. That's a key part of President Trump's efforts to make America great again. In order to revive the manufacturing industry, the country needs workers, especially skilled labor. But where are they? A UK-based startup may have an answer. Its use of artificial intelligence could reshape the manufacturing sector and help fill the labor gap.
A British company's novel use of AI could revolutionize manufacturing. It says it has the solution to the US's labour and skills shortage And as a focus on revitalising US manufacturing intensifies, it's attracting attention from the country's firms. Cloud NC chief Theo Saville is pioneering the technology to transform computer numerical control, or CNC, machining. It's a critical process used to program machinery to create specific parts for industries ranging from automotive to nuclear to healthcare.
Cloud NC is an AI company that builds software that tells metal-cutting robots how to carve blocks of metal into useful shapes for industry, which is something that is done to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars around the world every year. Literally everything that is made, the things you hold, the planes you fly in, the submarines under the sea, those products all start in a machine that looks like that. And our software makes it much, much easier to run and control these machines.
Traditionally, CNC machining has relied on outdated software, despite its importance. It requires skilled operators, an increasingly scarce resource, to program these machines manually with thousands of instructions. Saville says Cloud NC's technology cuts manufacturing times by approximately 80%, and that it provides a viable solution to the skills gap confronting the industry.
So the problem that we have in the West is not enough people to run these machines, and that problem gets worse every single year. It got a lot worse when the Liberation Day tariffs said we're going to bring $30 billion worth of machining back from China alone into the USA. But where are the people to make that thing? We can't train them fast enough, it takes years. So the only way to fill the gap is with software that makes the people that we have able to produce more things.
As tariffs take effect, Cloud NC says its technology has already helped more than 100 US manufacturers, and that it's poised for substantial growth.
Anti-Chinese Communist Party slogans projected onto a university building in southwestern China last Friday. One slogan says, quote, "Overthrow the red fascists, topple the Chinese Communist Party tyranny." Another one said a new China would only be possible without the CCP. Freedom is not a favor. We have to fight to get it back. This comes ahead of the country's military parade. That's where Chinese leader Xi Jinping is expected to be flanked by the leaders of Russia and North Korea in a show of solidarity against the West. The slogans were projected onto the building for about 50 minutes from a hotel across the street. Police weren't able to find the protester. He left a letter on the table, urging police officers to not aid Beijing's tyranny. He added that if everyone stands up to protest against Beijing's rule, the bad guys wouldn't do what they please. The protester, called Qi Hong, had escaped to the UK with his family. In an interview with a New York Times columnist, he said he's inspired by similar protests in China in recent years. Hong chose to project slogans onto a university building because college students are like seeds who would wake up one day. He projected the slogans remotely after arriving in the UK. Qi said the letter was to help awaken the conscience in Chinese police officers. He said his relatives in China have been arrested by authorities. To build or not to build, that's the dilemma India is facing over China's new dam project. Beijing is set to build a massive dam in Tibet at the border between China and India. India is afraid it'll reduce water flows on a major river in its country and is scrambling to fast-track plans for its own dam to mitigate the effects. However, locals fear the Indian dam will also destroy their way of life.
This corner of India, wedged between China, Bhutan, and Myanmar, is the front line in a water war between two Asian superpowers. Beijing and Delhi have plans for massive rival dams on a river that courses from a Tibetan glacier through both countries. On the Indian side, residents here in Parang village are pushing back, saying Delhi's dam would destroy their way of life. When India's largest hydropower company moved surveying equipment here last May, villagers vandalized machinery, demolished a nearby bridge, and ransacked police huts guarding the operation. India has been rushing to fast-track its dam since China announced its plans in December for a mega dam in Tibet. That would be built in a border county just before the river crosses into India. New Delhi worries that it means its longtime strategic rival could weaponize its control of the river, and says a mega dam of its own will mitigate risk. The head of the Indian state along the China-India border warned that two major rivers in India could dry up considerably once China's dam is built. He added that the dam could be what he considered a water bomb. He warned that China could potentially use the dam to store water and release it suddenly. This would create a torrent that could devastate downstream regions. On top of that, the livelihood of millions in India and other countries depends on the river. India's dam would be a reserve of water in dry seasons and a reservoir to hold back any sudden excess from China. But for the villagers of Parong, the dam project poses a threat to their way of life as they live off paddy, orange, and sweet lime farms in the mist-shrouded hills and valleys nourished by the river. Two sources familiar with the matter say at least 16 villages are likely to be lost to the storage area of the dam, directly affecting an estimated 10,000 people. Community leaders say more than 100,000 people will be impacted overall.
Coming up, Britain, France, and Germany have launched a 30-day process to reimpose United Nations sanctions on Iran over its nuclear program. The 80th anniversary of World War II is fueling a clash between China and Taiwan, with Taiwan accusing Beijing of pushing false narratives. That and more in just a minute here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Britain, France, and Germany have launched a 30-day process to reimpose United Nations sanctions on Iran over its nuclear program. That's according to a letter sent by the three nations to the UN Security Council, as seen by Reuters. They're accusing Iran of failing to abide by a 2015 deal with world powers aimed to prevent the country from developing a nuclear weapon. So what's next? We take a closer look.
Anger and concern in Tehran after Britain, Germany and France triggered a process to reimpose UN sanctions over Iran's nuclear program. The Islamic Republic rejects Western accusations that it's seeking a nuclear weapon, but the three powers say it has violated a 2015 deal and have launched the so-called snapback mechanism that sets sanctions in train. Israel and the United States bombed Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile facilities during an Israel-Iran war in June. Israeli strikes that month killed top nuclear scientists. The UN's International Atomic Energy Agency says Iran is dramatically increasing enrichment of uranium to up to 60% purity, close to the roughly 90% weapons-grade level. And Western countries say such a high level isn't needed for civilian uses. But Iran says its program is peaceful. Science is power, this billboard says. Here's Sanam Vakil of London's Chatham House think tank.
After the war, Iran evicted IAEA inspectors from Tehran, so its nuclear facilities have not been assessed, and the damage to those facilities have not been assessed by the IAEA, and there has been no formal assessment by any international body. There have been some intelligence assessments. So in absence of that oversight, there is really no clarity. Iran could be using this lack of oversight to make some advancements should its program have survived, or some parts and components of its program survived. Iran could at the same time be trying to use the lack of oversight as a leverage point to gain some concessions and return to the negotiating table.
The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, of 2015 lifted UN, US and European sanctions on Tehran in return for curbs on its nuclear program. As well as Iran and the three European powers, the US, Russia and China all signed. A UN Security Council resolution that year enshrined the deal. But that resolution expires October 18, as does the ability of any party to the deal to trigger a sanctions snapback. Snapback launches the sanctions process at the 15-member UN Security Council. Now the Security Council must vote within 30 days on a resolution to continue Iran's sanctions relief. That's expected to fail, since Britain, France and the United States have veto powers. If so, all UN sanctions on Iran will be reimposed in late September. Russia and China say Germany, France and Britain have not followed the dispute resolution process outlined in the deal. So why did they launch snapback?
They would like to use this pressure on Iran to return oversight on Iran's nuclear program, as well as return to the negotiating table in order to bring more transparency and accountability on this important international issue.
I will sign a presidential memorandum.
US President Donald Trump's decision to withdraw from the Iran nuclear agreement in 2018 led to what Vakil calls a cascade of crises. Iran began moving away from its nuclear-related commitments under the accord.
If we have to do something very hard.
Trump restored a maximum pressure campaign. And with the war in June, indirect nuclear talks between Iran and the US were suspended.
So in this context, in this landscape of mistrust, diplomatic uncertainty, and I would say above all, lack of leadership in Iran, but also in the international community, we're entering into yet another round of protracted tensions and perhaps even conflict.
International Atomic Energy Agency Chief Rafael Grossi said on Tuesday that the first team of IAEA inspectors is back in Iran, and the agency was still discussing how to resume inspections.
There are many facilities, some were attacked, some were not.
Britain, France and Germany have offered to extend the snapback mechanism for a limited time. They say that would allow more time for negotiations, with the aim of reaching a new agreement.
We urge Iran to reconsider this position.
Taiwan says China is spending the equivalent of 2% of its entire defense budget to commemorate the end of World War II. The remarks come as this year's 80th anniversary sparks a heated battle of narratives between China and Taiwan.
First of all, historically, we all know that the Chinese communists made no contribution at all in the War of Resistance. They only used the war to strengthen themselves. The People's Republic of China didn't exist when the Republic of China was fighting the Japanese.
Taiwan says China's ruling Communist Party is falsely claiming credit for leading the fight. It says most of the fighting was done by forces of what was then the Republic of China. The Republic's government fled to Taiwan in 1949 after losing a civil war. An official speaking at Taiwan's China Policy-Making Mainland Affairs Council said Beijing's parade will cost around $5 billion.
That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. For on-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.